Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Tonight, we are going to discuss the new Michael Moore film, The Planet of the Humans. So I don't know how many of you have watched it. I see some of you on, so welcome. So glad to see you all, Mike Avanen. And if you want to tell me in the comments if you've gotten a chance to see this film, that would be great. But those of you who have seen this film, I think you will understand why I am making this video and why I thought that it was important, because the video gives a very sober look at green energy. And I am a supporter of green energy, and I've always have been. And I've talked about it on my channel as something that could help us in the future, you know, reconnect to nature and be more efficient for us in a lot of ways. But I have been somebody that has always seen the middle way with green energy, and I've understood that there are other types of energy out there, and we will discuss more about this. But this film highlighted some of the green energy concerns, both on both sides of the left and the right. Those that have been against green energy and government spending on green energy will absolutely love this film. In fact, I've been listening to some people's responses on YouTube, and it seems that people are very excited, the ones that have been against the new Green Deal and spending money on greener energy, because this film kind of supports them in saying that it's inefficient or it's not a great idea. So for those of us that have been environmentally concerned and trying to find ways to support greener energy ideas in this world may feel a loss of hope at this time. And I thought that it was important to discuss some things. And I have some ideas, and I'm not one that is ever at loss of hope, and I hope that we can go through this. So for those of you who have not watched the film, I highly recommend it. Definitely check it out. It is easy to find on YouTube. It is a free film. It is about close to 2 hours long, so it's a very long film. But it's really great because it gives you an overhaul kind of journey with the director, Jeff Gibbs, who was a green energy supporter for a very long time. He was actually very much an earth guardian, writing articles about green energy and trying to bring more of a view of environmentalism into the world. But he did this documentary with Michael Moore in order to get some more information on green energy, and he found, you know, some things out that he was not really happy about. Some of the concerns that were talked about in the film was that green energy is not efficient to power whole cities. And they show this several times when they visit these facilities with solar plants, especially one in Michigan, in which they have a conversation with one of the directors, or I guess the lead organizers of the plant. And he said that it's only about 8% efficiency on the solar panels. So the film goes on to show more evidence that green energy is not as efficient as fossil fuels, and green energy is anything that we can contribute to being a free, renewable energy that's not a finite resource like fossil fuels, but is water, wind, solar, and also biological waste, such as like manure. That's also considered green energy. So that was the number one concern, I would say, is that he saw that it was inefficient, and that what was happening was when he was going into these facilities and these places of solar power panels, and even these big events that were said to be run completely by solar panel, they said that they had to still be plugged into the grid in order to really maximize the amount of energy that's being used. So they were not completely off of electricity or the grid. And even when he went to GM Motors, he found out that the cars that they were so proud of, these electrical cars, they had to still be plugged into the grid. So they're showing that the fossil fuels is not being completely replaced, and that green energy is not as efficient. The other concern that they have is that millions of dollars are being spent of the taxpayer money or government money, and it's not completely replacing fossil fuels at all. So it's almost like there's two types of budgets happening where we're spending money on fossil fuels because that's the backup and the storage, the energy storage that we need, because when green energy does not work, such as if it's a cloudy day and there's no sun out or there's no wind, then that's when they have to turn on the regular electricity to power things. So they're saying that money is being spent on fossil fuels regardless, even with green energy. So that was a concern. The other one is that the Green Illusion movement by Ozzy Zahner, he is somebody that had always a concern about green energy, and he kind of goes out of his way to show that it's kind of been this illusion put in front of the people to show that green energy is something that's completely going to sustain our world. So his concern is that the clean energy of natural gas plants has to be built bigger than coal plants because you need more of the natural materials in order to produce actual natural gas versus the regular fossil fuel gas. So he's saying that we use more fossil fuels to create green energy plants, and that gas plants run solar plants like Ivanpah. They have huge amounts of solar panels there, and what happens is they have to start up the solar plant facility using actual natural gas, or not natural gas, but well, yes, natural gas, like the regular gas that we get from fossil fuels. So he's saying that even though these solar plants are up and running in the morning to get them started, they still need to burn the fossil fuels. Okay, so that was a concern of his. Then the other concern was that power outages happen or can become more of a concern if we had to switch completely all to green energy, that we need some kind of backup power source. Otherwise, if there's no sun or wind or water, then we need to have some sort of energy that can be on at all times so that our cities and our facilities are not going to suffer from power outages. The other concern was that we need energy storages to give a foundation background, like I just said. So having a backup battery in order to kind of store up the sunlight and any of the wind energy that's created and generated, they need to find ways of actually storing that. And what they find is that if we turn on and off the regular electricity plants, that it actually causes more loss of energy. So it's also not efficient to just run the green energy in times of need or when we can because there's enough sun or there's enough wind, and then go to electricity if there's not, because they say that turning on and off could actually cause some type of energy loss as well. So that was a concern. The other concern is that natural materials like graphite that's being used for lithium batteries in your cell phones and in other types of technology that we use today, it's a rare form of carbon that has to be mined from the earth. And that's causing some problems because we have to cut down forests and we have to dig and destroy the earth looking for these kind of rare minerals. So even though they're shown to be more greener energy, like the graphite is also used in solar panels, or could be in the future, he's saying that that also causes problems. The other concern is that Apple, the company that claims to be 100% ran on renewable energy in their facilities, is actually still hooked up to the grid. They showed that the electrical lines were still there and they were using electricity, I guess. They didn't really go too much into it, but they showed in the documentary that the power lines were still running to the Apple companies. So they didn't go too much into it. Like, I wanted to know more about that to see, well, when were they actually using electricity? So it would be interesting if somebody works at Apple and actually made some kind of response to this film and maybe told us exactly what goes on and how they claim to use 100% renewable energy in the Apple facilities, but then actually are still hooked into the grid. And then the other one is that we cannot fully sustain civilizations on green energy. Of course, that was a big one. The Joshua Tree concerns also concerned me too when I saw this, that they are destroying the desert trees, the Joshua trees, and also a lot of forest land and desert land in order to build these solar panels and these types of natural plants all over. And that is a concern because trees are actually our best defense against climate change and actually can provide us even more, I think, efficient energy for us, that we need to really make sure that we don't tear those down. The other concern was that wind turbines, the solar panels, only last about 10 to 20 years max, and they show them kind of broken and, you know, beat up after a while. They get really weather beaten and they just don't last forever. So there's that concern that we're spending, you know, lots and lots of money for things that are not going to really last a very long time. So there's also not a good thing here that's pointed out in the film. And I do want to point them out. McNeil Biomass Plant in Vermont is not doing the greatest in terms of helping our planet. They came up with an idea that they could use wood chips or wood in order to produce and create energy. The problem is that the documentary clearly shows evidence that they are burning whole trees. They are actually cutting down whole trees to create electricity instead of actually using twigs or, you know, just kind of debris that you might find in the forest. They're actually cutting down whole trees because they're trying to create and generate enough electricity to power the towns around them. So that's a big problem because now we have a concern about forests being cut down for electricity. So the film is, I think it's really well done in opening our eyes to showing us that we are in the very beginning stages of understanding how to power our world in a more efficient way and a more greener way. And we have a lot more things to learn. And I think that we are in the very beginning stages and we're taking baby steps towards this greener energy movement. And I think that it's really great if you can keep an objective eye, then you might not lose complete hope, because there is hope. And I'm going to give you some solutions that he kind of hinted at in the film, but more so I'm going to really bring them out and highlight them, because I think that people really need to think a little bit more beyond what the film gives you, because the film does not give solutions. So the film is more of a spotlight, and it brings things to surface of what we really need to look at, and, you know, not be kind of blinded by some of the illusions that are put out there about the green energy movement. But at the same time, I think that we really need to discuss some real solutions. So that's what my video will be mostly about. So my thoughts are that this is the baby steps of humanity. And although if you have ever seen my videos before, I'm pretty spiritual in the idea that I believe that consciousness is infinite and that we have had multiple universes together, and we have experienced kind of our time together building our civilizations, and we are now just kind of learning how to recreate and create a galactic world, a galactic civilization. Once again, we are in kind of the very beginning starts where we're seeing us head, you know, closer and closer into communicating into space and having more technology on our Earth that can help us live in a more efficient way. But with that beginning stages, there are always concerns in the very beginning of how we can actually do this. And so this is growing pains. This is our learning stages that we're in, and I can definitely feel that. So this is not a time to look at it as if nothing is going to work. Although some people might come away from the film thinking that we are doomed and that there's nothing that can be done, there surely can be something that we can do. And we'll talk more about that. I wanted to show you that although the film makes a very good point about the idea that green energy cannot sustain large cities, wind power and solar power at this point in time is not as efficient to even sustain a large concert event. They went to many of these outdoor concerts, which is something that we can talk about too, because if we're talking about conserving energy, then we might have to think about the types of activities that we do as humans and what we can kind of, cut back down on. But what they have found is that when they went to these outdoor events and these music events that were celebrating green energy, is that they still had to be plugged into the grid in order to have the instruments be heard and the speakers, to amplify the sound. So they were not completely green energy usage in the festivals, but they had actually be plugged in. So these large events, huge cities and big factories are going to have a harder time being powered right now by solar power or by wind energy or even by hydro energy, even though the film did not go into hydro energy at all, which was interesting to me. I would have loved to see the statistics on that, because I think that water is one of the most powerful forces on Earth. And when we learn how to utilize that, that's really when we're going to really be able to power some things. But maybe that will be in another film, right? So I wanted to show you this, that I'm going to share my screen here. Because although, yes, I do understand that green energy is something that will not be able to sustain whole cities, and we're going to have to be smarter about it. This is my father's house here. And I wanted to tell you that individually, solar power panels can help individual family homes. And I have proof of it here. I asked my father about the bills that came in and what he saw, in his experience, if it helped him or not. And he said that it's great for spring and summer and bad for winter in terms that, if there's no sun or if it's a gloomy day, then they end up having to pay for the solar panels $60 a month because they rent the solar panels. If they bought the solar panels, it would be about $10,000 as what they have on top of the entire roof. And so $60 a month they pay to rent the solar panels. But when there isn't any issues for sunlight, and when it's a nice clear day, spring and summer are great. The average electrical bill that they get is $16.29 a month. Now they do have to pay the renting fee for the solar panels of the $59 or $60 a month, but the $16.29 to ComEd is very nice. That's their electrical bill. The November bill is $64. So it starts to get a little bit more when it starts to get more gloomy out. And January, their coldest month, and with snow and everything, and very gloomy days, they said it was $101. Without the panels, it used to be $140 on those coldest days and the coldest month. So there is there's a benefit to them financially because that's the only bill that they have, but they do have to pay for the renting of the solar panels. But still with that, they still are saving money because without the solar panels in the summertime, running everything, the air conditioner, because they run it in the summer, it was coming up to be about $89 to about almost $100. So there's a significant benefit for individual homes to have solar panels. If we can find ways of making it more cost effective and not be $10,000 for individual homes, that would be great. And maybe even renting could be lowered too. So I just wanted to show you that, because I do have experience with that. And I think that that was worth talking about, because individually they don't really talk about that in the film. So I'm going to share that. There we go. So there you have it. So there is a benefit to using greener energy when it comes to running smaller things like small homes, small businesses. You know, this is the thing, is that if we are going to do greener energy, then everything is going to have to get a little bit smaller and not so large scale. So individually, it does help, and it can power your whole home, and they're very happy with it. It's just hard in the winter because they do see that bill go up, but they said that they still end up saving money as it is, even though the winter is, you know, sometimes tough for them in terms of they don't generate any solar power, and it will show that on an app that they have. So that is, I think, important to keep in mind, is that when we're trying to look at green energy to power huge facilities, that could be a little bit of a challenge right now, because we don't have efficient enough solar panels that are able to absorb all of the energy from the sun. We don't have efficient enough, I guess, wind turbines that can power these places. So I think that that's something to look at. We need to look at efficiency, and we need to look at more of the individual help that solar energy can do for each of us and each of our homes. And I think that that is something that we can think of. The other thought I had when I was watching the film, it was going more into the idea of like these minerals and these materials that are considered to be green energy, or maybe not so much green energy, but just raw materials that we use all the time. One of the things that came across is concrete is the third leading cause of CO2 emissions in the world. And so I admire the places that don't have so much concrete. I call it the concrete jungle. And just imagine if our cities or if our towns had less concrete everywhere, and how more enchanting that would look. You know, maybe we can get more flatter river rocks to walk upon, cobblestone, but maybe we could cut out the concrete, maybe just for the cars, although maybe by that time we should be flying instead, and get rid of the idea of concrete, because concrete is something that has covered almost our entire earth where there's not water and a few forests, and that is causing the highest amount of carbon dioxide in the world. It's the third leading cause. So that's something I think that the film points out and does not discuss, but I can just tell you that I personally would like less concrete and to actually enjoy the bare, ground more. And I would like to see us be able to have future cities that might stop paving the entire earth with flat concrete, just so that maybe we have a flat surface to walk upon. Maybe we should use our legs and our muscles more. I mean, it's really not such a big deal to constantly concrete everything. We need to think about all the homes that have driveways and things like that. But there are ways that you can drive your car and still get through without having a concrete driveway. So this is something that we might need to think about in the future, are some of the things that we do as a society that causes these problems. and the excess that we do it. And we need to get more ingenious and creative, and I think more aesthetically appealing too, because I think that the concrete jungle is, in my taste, it's not as beautiful as maybe just the natural earth. The other thought I had was, so this film, some people were upset, or at least they took it as saying that the main thing about this film is that it's anti-human, in the idea that it's pointing towards human depopulation or a need to decrease our population growth. And I said that, well, we should not play God with each other's lives, and we shouldn't determine who should, be able to procreate and who should not. But at the same time, I think that it's an important thing that we all consciously look at our own lives and look at ourselves. My husband and I, we're having discussions like this right now. I think that we all have a responsibility to look at the future of this earth and take a look at, how many children we bring in terms of, looking at these bigger families that we used to have in the past is something that we might not be able to have. And we might have to think quality over quantity in terms of human life. So that is something that I think that is needed, in terms of we need to be more consciously aware of reproduction. And that is definitely done with just abstinence and, just being mindful with who you share your body with, and unplanned pregnancies and all of that. We need to be really conscious and careful about that. So in general, it might make humanity look at ourselves and decide that we need to take a step back and just, before we think, oh, I'm going to have 6, 7 kids as a family, we need to think about what is that effect on the earth in terms of living in a bigger house, consuming more energy, throwing more things out. That's something that we might need to start being more conscious and aware of. Where I do believe that in the past, human population did definitely shoot up and increase, with the baby boomer population. It is known through the baby boomer population and through all of that is that, through these movements of free love and all of that, that there was less of a look at the consequences of our choices of who we, sleep around with and how many kids we reproduce. This is also something that maybe the religious can look at as well. Those that believe that you're supposed to spread your seed all over the earth and with as many wives as possible and have as many children as possible is something that we might not be able to do. So there is a point to it, although I do not agree with starting any kind of depopulation schemes at all. And I have been a very big advocate about this. So I don't believe using vaccines. I don't believe chemical types of depopulations with the unknowing public. I don't believe in any of that. I think that that is actually really detrimental to us spiritually, because we are one. And so if we start to have companies try to start to depopulate our human population, that's going to affect us all, in a very spiritual way. But I think that if we each individually look at our own responsibility in terms of, how much life we create and you reproduce, I think that that is something that we each can do. And I think that it's fair. I think that it is fair that everybody look and see, well, maybe you will not be able to bring in 7 children into the world. But I think, to be honest, when you look at these larger families, sometimes people can be very lucky within larger families. But many times, larger families, there are always children that go unnoticed, uncared for, and neglected. And many of these larger families do not have the money in order to give a good life to the amount of children that they actually do have. So we need to be more conscious and aware of the amount of life that we give and understand that that's a soul. That's a whole body that is going to be a consumer and a producer of waste. And of course, they're going to give wonderful things to Earth as a potential for what they can create. But at the same time, it is a carbon imprint on Earth. So we each need to kind of think about it that way, just being more responsible parents or parents to be, and think about it in terms of helping the planet. The other thing that I agreed with was that we need to build better and not bigger, because it was a concern to see that some of the natural plants were actually much bigger than some of the coal plants. And that's because it just was less efficient, so they had to build bigger. And I don't think that's quite the answer. I think that we really need to just utilize technology better, and we need to come up with more efficient ways to absorb the energy. And we'll get more into that. I said that we need to discover using nature's technology, like inspired architecture called archaeology, and biomimicry, which I have a video about, how we could build in ways that is more efficient and sustainable, less square human designs. So the whole movement on biomimicry and archaeology is looking at the design, the natural design of nature, looking at the design of a leaf or a tree, the shape of it, the things that we find in nature, and using it in architecture or in human innovation and inventions and design in order to create the most efficient type of way to displace energy. And that is, I think, key, is when we use nature as inspiration. This is when we get better facilities, more efficient energy absorption. It is about the actual shape of the building. It's about the actual design of the plant. That's how we have to probably look at it in the future. It's not to go bigger, it's to build better and more creative and more of an intelligent look at nature's divine design already that really is efficient in its energy. And that's what we need to probably look at more. So I highly suggest we utilizing biomimicry and archaeology at this time, or arcology, it's actually arcology. And then that way we can probably have better plants and facilities of greener energy. The other thing I agreed with was the biomass plants, that absolutely we should not be cutting down whole trees in order to produce electricity. And I heard 1 million trees are actually being cut down a year in order to produce electricity. And although the proposal was wood chips and twigs or branches by the biomass plant inventors, unfortunately, that is not the case, that it is actually documented, and now there's full evidence that they are cutting down whole trees. And this is moving backwards. I think that all biomass plants need to stop at this point, stop production of electricity, and they need to find ways of being more creative. There are so many people that have twigs and branches on their lawns that, you know, when they're pruning or when they're going through, you know, getting rid of their dead foliage or dead branches that fall from trees, that's something that we can do. They can partner with actual you know, the cleaning companies and the sanitation types of companies in the cities that pick up the lawn leavings. I mean, that's probably more what they should be using, but unfortunately they have been cutting down whole trees. So if we need to start a petition or do something, I think that we need to definitely rally against the biomass plants. The more trees, the better, because burning forests for energy will destroy one of our best defenses against any type of climate change. And that's really what I wanted to get to. The other thing too is I don't think that we should ever be thinking about using animals or animal fat for energy, as GE scientists are proposing. There was an idea to use alligator fat for energy. And I think that that's also going backwards. If we have to kill other life in order to give us energy, that's a form of dark magic. That's what dark magic is. When you use a life source in order to selfishly take for yourself, that's dark magic. So we do not want to go that route. I mean, that also will affect us spiritually and psychically. We will feel that. We will feel that we are taking life in order to live ourselves, just so we can power up our computers or put a light on. And that's just something that we really need to stay clear of. So I hope the GE scientists were half joking, or it was a half-baked idea that is not going to get its feet on the ground, because using animal fat is a terrible idea, unless I guess it comes from byproducts of meat companies. But that's another thing. The meat company are also causing a lot of carbon emissions and energy waste as well. So that's also a problem too. The other thing I wanted to say was that, the thing that this film did not talk about is nuclear energy. And there's a lot of concerns about nuclear energy because people think that it's radioactive and that it can cause problems. But the more and more that you look at nuclear energy, and I will go into it, I even have a book of Tesla today to read from, that nuclear energy is quantum energy, and it's being able to use the forces of the universe. And just tiny quartz crystals themselves have a little bit of quantum energy in them. So quartz crystals are supposedly being used in solar panels. However, they find that it could be used for, sand particles can be used in solar panels, but they're finding that the most efficient type of energy used in solar panels is from quartz crystal. So crystals are our answer for the future. And many of you that have kind of felt that within you about, Atlantis and Lemuria and these past civilizations of crystal technology, well, that is right on the right pathway, because quartz crystals are what we really need to start using. And even Tolkien, he had the Fëanorian crystals, the lights that glow blue for the elves in his stories, especially in the older ages. You don't really see that so much in Lord of the Rings in the Third Age, but during the first ages, it talked about it. And crystals is something that we definitely need to invest our energy in terms of our focus, because the crystals that we're using for the solar panels are not as efficient, or there's not enough of them in terms of how we're using them and utilizing them. But the quantum energy within crystals can be used. Nuclear energy is created by a decay of atoms or unstable atoms, and this causes radiation. But it is free energy in terms that it comes from using something organic and allowing it to decompose and using and playing with the atoms in that way. But the film did not touch on nuclear energy, and I think that it should, and I hope that we have another film that goes more into it and maybe visits nuclear power plants and discuss, some of the efficiency with that. Nuclear fusion or fission is when you smash atoms together in a collider. And if that energy can be at the center of our cities, then it could be controlled to be attached to a grid to power our towns and our homes. And this is free energy for our future cities, and possibly can be controlled better to not have to dump radioactive waste, such as what we have right now in nuclear power plants. They do have to dump whatever has decayed. They now have radioactive waste, and unfortunately, some of them get rid of it in the water, as we have learned, or they bury it deep underground, but that's not good either. So we need to be more efficient with nuclear energy and find a way where we can get rid of the nuclear waste, but we can also utilize larger crystals and utilize their energy that they give us, because quartz crystals are absolutely known to be able to give you power. Your watches have quartz crystals, phones do, the solar power panels, a lot of technology uses crystals, but they're tiny. And now we need to start thinking of maybe using bigger crystals that we can find underground. The other thing I wanted to say is that we really need to take a look at Nikola Tesla's original thoughts of free energy, and what he proposed was using electromagnetism as free energy, which is really one of the forces of this universe. It is strong nuclear force and weak nuclear force and electromagnetism and gravity. And those are the forces of our universe. So the key to a sustainable future, a galactic civilization for humanity, and a future powered world is by using the forces of the universe and mastering them and harnessing them and controlling them in a way where we can use their power in order to create the things that we would really want to create on Earth. Now, Tesla, I wanted to go into this. He believed in natural energy, and he's known as one of the most intelligent inventors on Earth. So I wanted to read from this book here. This is a great book on Tesla, The Wizard of Electricity, Energy from Nature. So this is a book that has a lot of his quotes, his own quotes, and it says, "It seems that I have always been ahead of my time." That's what Tesla said. And throughout his life, Tesla was interested in the power of nature. He used the natural energy of maybugs to power his stick windmill as a child, and he helped harness the hydroelectric power of Niagara Falls with his alternating current motors and transformers. And he often spoke of harnessing the energy of the sun, stating that fossil fuels were wasteful. As far back as 1891, he argued that nature has stored up in the universe infinite energy. To Tesla, the eternal recipient and transmitter of this infinite energy is the ether. That particular idea did not hold up to scrutiny, but he continued to look to nature. One of the most thought-provoking documents of Tesla's numerous writings was an article he wrote for the Century Illustrated magazine, June 1900, which was edited by Robert Underwood Johnson. In a long and sometimes mystical treatise called The Problem of Increasing Human Energy, with special references to the harnessing of the sun's energy, Tesla leapt ahead 100 years in anticipating the need for renewable sources of energy to power our planet. He noted that besides fuel, there is abundant material from which we might eventually derive power, and suggested that an immense amount of energy is locked up in limestone, for instance, and machines can be driven by liberating the carbonic acid through sulfuric acid or otherwise. He even claimed to have constructed such an engine and that it operated satisfactorily. Tesla was so far ahead of his time that while others at the turn of the 20th century were busy exploiting coal, iron, aluminum, and drilling for oil, he was already recognizing the limits of these endeavors. He was into conservation. Whatever our resources of primary energy may be in the future, Tesla wrote, we must, to be rational, obtain it without consumption of any material. He believed that natural sources of energy could eliminate the need of coal, oil, gas, or any other of the common fuels. One way was to harness the power of the wind. It is difficult to believe, but it is nevertheless a fact that since time immemorable, man has had at his disposal a fairly good machine which has enabled him to utilize the energy of the ambient medium. This machine is the windmill. Tesla believed that the power of the wind was very considerable. He was not so keen on the potential of harnessing the tides and felt that any wave or tide motor would have been but a small chance of competing commercially with the windmill, which is by far the better machine, allowing a much greater amount of energy to be obtained in a simpler way. 100 years later, the wind turbine is increasingly becoming a mainstay of renewable energy generation. Long ago, Tesla came to the conclusion that energy from the sun was both possible and a potentially unlimited resource. He saw two ways in which this could be achieved: either to turn to use the energy of the sun stored in the ambient medium, or to transmit through the medium the sun's energy to distant places from some locality where it was obtainable without consumption of material. There was tremendous technological challenges in the year 1900 to accomplish this vision, but Tesla believed the best option to obtain power would be to avail ourselves of the sun's rays, which beat the earth incessantly and supplies energy at a maximum rate of over 4 million horsepower per square mile. He believed that an inexhaustible source of power would be opened up by the discovery of some efficient method of utilizing the energy of the rays. While the development of capture and storage technologies for exploiting solar energy would take another 100 years to reach a level of commercial feasibility, the man who could envision an entire alternating current transformer in his head also envisioned both the need and potential of tapping the energy of the sun. So Tesla was known for really investigating sun energy, solar power, and also electromagnetism. We need to go back to his theories, and we need to really focus on what he was trying to teach the world. He was somebody that was way ahead of his time, and he knew it. And this is the sad thing, is that unfortunately electrical companies took over his inventions and pushed his thoughts out because profit was something that was more important for those on Earth rather than utilizing this type of free energy. So this is a concern with those that do support green energy. We don't want to see this happen again, as it has happened with Tesla a long time ago. But we can come to compromises and realize, where are the limitations right now and how we can come up with better solutions. So that was my suggestion, is that we really need to focus on nuclear energy, but a nuclear energy that produces less radioactive waste. And if we can focus on that, that is our future. And if we can harness those powers of the universe, such as the electromagnetism, the strong and the weak force of nuclear energy, and even gravity, if we can try to harness and control and look at the atoms and collide them together and create these colliders in, because we have some atom colliders in the world, but they're not all over. So we need to have more of those, and we need to have that be able to power our cities. And that is something that we might need to get into in the future. Those are really what I think that we need to focus on, is utilize the forces of the universe, our known universe, that really reflect our own kind of power that we have within. And so spiritually, this has a lot of implications, that when we learn how to harness these powers and forces of the universe, we evolve in a very big way, and spiritually, and just getting more closer to our unlimited potential as creators. The most important thing, though, and this film really did hit this on the head, and I think that this was important, and I'm going to spend the rest of the time talking about this here, is that we need to reduce our actual consumption of things. Our energy that we use as individuals, we actually just need to look at our own lives and see what we can have less of. And that's really important. One thing that I did want to talk about, I want to point out, because I saw commercials for this on my apps, and I realized that there's way too many of these. So there are apps on your iPhone or whatever phone that you have, where you can Do you remember those vending machines where they have a claw and they reach down and they pull out like some kind of toy stuffed animal? So there are apps now that are connected to those vending machines. So although those vending machines have a lot of junk in them, I mean, let's be honest, it's a lot of plastic or it's a lot of stuffed animals, and those things are not biodegradable. So they sit in our landfills and they, they produce waste and they produce methane gas and things like that as they sit and decompose and take up to 500 years. So these types of machines, these games, are now on apps, and I wanted to read how many there are. There's an app for plastic toys and just kind of unnecessary junk, just things that we don't really need in our homes. There are apps about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, about 30 apps of claw games. There's Claw E, which has 74.4 thousand reviews already. There's Claw Toys, which has 3.45 thousand reviews. Open Wow, Claw Machine Master, Prize Claw, 1.18 thousand. Claw Bert, 16.0 thousand. Claw Toys, iCatch Online, Claw Machine, Pocket Arcade, and 20 other ones that I did not even write down. That's a concern because it is about the plastic consumption that humans really need to look at. We need to look around at our homes and understand that less is more. And one of the largest plastic producers are toys, for children. So this is something that we're going to have to really kind of look at. And it might be a sacrifice, or it might feel like a sacrifice because, we at one point might have looked at our lives and thought, well, I can have 1 billion of plastic toys and I can have all this stuff. But what we're realizing is that all of that generates waste, that eventually when that child no longer wants that toy, or when you don't want that plastic toy or whatever it is that's made out of plastic or something that's non-biodegradable, it sits in the landfills. It takes up precious space on our earth, and it actually causes the methane gas and carbon dioxide emissions and things like that that really pollute, our air quality. And this is a concern. So the best thing that we can do for our future of Earth is what this film talked about. And I thought that this was really great, that there are too many human beings using too much too fast. And this was a quote in the film by Stephen Churchill. As a global community, we really are dealing with population. The big question is, can a species be smart enough to limit its own presence? We need to rein in our consumerism, which is not reined in if we think we have an unlimited amount of sources. So that was by another female expert on environmentalism. That is a clear indication that the solution to our problem is not to invent, green energy that's going to just kind of put a Band-Aid over this energy problem or this environmental problem. It really comes down to us all looking at ourselves individually and looking at our families and looking at our lives and our lifestyle and looking at how we can consume less. And I'll tell you something, that when you consume less and you dial down on buying things and you really are a conscious and aware consumer, you're not just kind of buying whatever you want, but you're thinking about, well, where is that going to go afterwards when you're done? When you're a conscious and aware consumer, that is what's going to really help our planet, because we will have less things to worry about. And so the whole point is that it's not so much about I don't think that they're talking about population control in a negative way in terms of playing God and destroying people's lives or limiting them in terms of their individual rights to reproduce. But I think that there's a certain type of awareness that they're trying to highlight that we need, and that we need a little bit more of a conscious effort with how we are spending our money and what we are surrounding ourselves with. And I have a solution to this. So I'm going to pull up some of my my Dutch background, but Hygge is a type of lifestyle that is known by many of the Danish countries, and it's even, well, it's a Norwegian word that actually means well-being. And this is the solution, is that when we all have a type of lifestyle that is inspired by the well-being of living with less and appreciating our lives more because we have less things, then that is what's going to help us. So it's actually a lot how Tolkien described his elves and his hobbits. So I wanted to read you a part in Ents, Elves, and Eredor, which is kind of what was talked about in Tolkien's story about how his hobbits and his elves really lived very simply and very happily. And I will get more into how you can start to live more of a Hygge lifestyle and why it's so eco-friendly. But here, I wanted to read you this. So the horticulture and the aesthetic of the elves, the enjoyment of food and gardens. The first appearance of elves in the storyline of The Lord of the Rings occurs on the second night of Frodo's journey through the Shire on his way to Rivendell, preparing to sleep al fresco in Woody End, beside the road to Woodhall in the East Farthing. Frodo, Sam, and Pippin hear a group of travelers singing an elvish song of Elbereth. As the hobbits wait in the shadows, a company of elves led by Gildor passes by, and starlight glimmering in their eyes and hair. Frodo points out that these are high elves, few of whom now remain in Middle-earth, east of the Great Sea. They are the fairest folk among the three kindreds of elves, who now seldom visit the Shire. These elves are passing through Eredor, leaving Middle-earth on their way to Valinor, across the sea in the farthest west. The mythic and environmental implications of their permanent abandonment of Middle-earth are profound and worth exploration. But at this point in the plot, their appearance on the outskirts of the Shire once again raises an interesting practical problem that is unresolved by Tolkien, here or elsewhere in The Lord of the Rings. Where does their food come from? The episode has several overt narrative functions. First and most important, Frodo and Gildor's conversation concerning Frodo's quest for Rivendell adds to the urgency of his journey, which is soon to change from simple departure to desperate flight. The ominous references to the Black Riders, along with Gildor's advice to make haste and neither stay nor turn back, heighten the narrative tension and deepen the reader's sense of foreboding. Second, the hobbit's encounter with the elves satisfies a desire expressed by Sam in the first chapter, a desire that serves as something of a leitmotif throughout the novel. But third, and most relevant for our purposes, the episode gives the fullest narrative description anywhere in the trilogy of the preparation and eating of food by elves. The meal comes after a march of some miles to the forested hills above Woodhall, when Frodo and his companions halt with their elven guides in a kind of open-air camp, a wide space of grass surrounded by trees. There is a fire in the hall, and food for hungry guests, says an elf standing beside Pippin. Then the scene of the meal is described. At the south end of the greensward, there was an opening. There the green floor ran on into the wood and formed a wide space like a hall, roofed by the boughs of trees. Their great trunks ran like pillars down each side, and in the middle there was a wood fire blazing, and upon the tree pillars torches with lights of gold and silver were burning steadily. The elves sat around the fire upon the grass or upon the sawn rings of old trunks. Some went to and fro bearing cups and pouring drink. Others brought food and heaped on heat, plates and dishes. The hall, as it turns out, is not like the splendid one of Theoden or even the simpler hall of Beorn, where Bilbo and the dwarves are nourished on their journey in The Hobbit. It is a natural hall, whose roof is made of tree boughs. The floor is the grass. The chairs are old tree trunks. The scene is illuminated by gold and silver light. His description of elves emphasizes the characteristics of this race, whereas the agrarian society of the Shire shows how a group of people can draw on the life-giving of the soil for an extremely long time, perhaps indefinitely, without permanently depleting or exhausting it. The elves illustrate a different outlook. Although they are as dependent on the earth for food as are the hobbits or any other race in Middle-earth, the elves are concerned primarily with the aesthetic qualities and the physical beauty of the created world. And I put that this is the key to our future success in terms of sustainability. One thing that you will notice a pattern of is that whenever we destroy forests or we destroy land in order to create and build better technology or these power plants, we destroy the aesthetics, the aesthetic value of the earth, and it actually looks ugly to us. You look and you'll see in this documentary, it looks barren and it looks not as beautiful. And that is key. When the earth does not look beautiful, it is telling us that we are depleting its natural energy within that environment. And that is something that humans have to be more aware of, because we have to be aware of how we work around nature and don't deplete its natural energy that it gives. And that's something that the Hygge lifestyle can really help with this, because it is more eco-friendly. There are less furniture and decor. It's quality versus quantity in the home. So this is something that can help with supply and demand. A Hygge lifestyle is very much like a Scandinavian type of look, or other cultures too. You know, if we can go into ancient Japan and look at the homes where it's just very minimal, you know, minimalism is really key here. Look around and try to see that less is more, and that this provides less waste. And Hygge also is about using candles at night and no electricity at night as much as you can, because it will create a very cozy and a warm atmosphere. And that's kind of what they had to do. In these Scandinavian countries and Danish countries, it can get very, very cold up, you know, in the north. And so they would use candle lights and warm blankets and pillows, and it's very cozy. It's a very cozy atmosphere, and that would be what they would use at night. So they would not use electricity at night, and they would use natural sunlight during the day. So if we can go back to candlelight and use actually less electricity wherever we can, and have less, be more content with less, then we can have more of a lifestyle that actually produces less waste. And we are using less energy ourselves, and we're using natural energy like fire candles and even the fireplace. You can actually find ways to burn wood that is already recycled or has been already something that's maybe chopped off from another type of product. So this is something that we can start to utilize, is that Hygge lifestyle. No lights for daytime at all, and at nighttime go switch to candlelight if you can, and have all the other rooms be dark, and just be in one cozy room together. If it's your living room, you're watching TV, just have the candlelight. Don't have all the lights on in the house. And it will provide a more cozy environment. And this is kind of the secret of Hygge. You can warm your house with a fireplace, in the wintertime, or open the windows to cool down the home, and maybe stop using the air conditioners, but allow the natural breeze to come through every once in a while. And also maybe use a fireplace, and in the wintertime sit by that fireplace and utilize the energy that way. Hygge homes have really no plastics in them. It's all just natural, organic type of material. You will find glass, ceramic, sometimes stainless steel or wood items, but hardly any plastics. There's no plastic or non-biodegradable materials in the Hygge home. Everything natural, either recycled or not, but very little is needed in the home to create a peaceful space. And then number 5, nature-inspired home and lifestyle motivates you to do more free activities outdoors with less cars, and indoors you can staying indoors. You can take more walks outside. The Hygge lifestyle is very nature inspired, and so it will get you more connected to nature, and you might find that you will have to do less activities indoors that require electricity or energy, and maybe you won't have to go to maybe some of these things that we do in society that uses a lot of energy, but you spend more time on your own in nature or with friends. Play outside for children in general, spending time less indoors allows you to use less energy. Eating at home, this lifestyle encourages home-cooked meals at home with family and friends rather than going to restaurants and creating a lot of energy input that way, and also waste as well. And the Hygge house is very green. Instead of using electrical hot wax burners or air purifiers, green plants such as ivy or snake plants or other plants help absorb carbon dioxide in your homes and toxins and allergens. So houseplants provide cleaner air freely. And also, although not all who live a Hygge lifestyle are vegan or vegetarians, many are, and you might want to consider eating less meat meals, which reduces energy used in factories and produce a lot of carbon waste. Going down to even 1 to 2 meat meals a week would have considerable help on the environment and on the impact of, just all of the carbon waste that is produced with these factories being open. So if you can help with the supply and demand in any kind of way, that would be great. The other thing too is that Hygge lifestyle is about spending time creating and using kind of natural materials to create things, such as gifts for friends or creating things in your home, such as there's less consumerism when you can make something from natural resources that you can easily find, like wood crafting or stone and bead jewelry, candle making, or painting and art. There's lots of ways that you can create using natural materials that you find outside, and you don't even have to buy so much. So if you can start thinking about creative ways that you can make your own things, this can really help. The other thing that a Hygge lifestyle is about is just being very honest and open with your friends and family, telling your friends and family that you are looking to lower your consumption of things. So not to buy you things for your birthdays or special days, but maybe give you experiences or donate to your favorite charities. And this helps cut down on consumption of goods. And clothes can be bought vintage or hand-me-down, so that you also help with the supply and demand that way. And you can pare down your clothes, and you'll have more of this efficient lifestyle where you're not spending all this time trying to figure out what you're going to wear, but you have a few things that you might wear. So in general, the life of minimalism can be very, very good on the environment. So clothes, think about paring down that. There is a project you might want to look at called the 33 Project, which is about having 33 articles of clothing in your closet and rotating them and finding ways to put outfits together with these 33 pieces. The Hygge lifestyle is one that is all about learning to live more simply and peacefully with less things. You will find your house to be a more tranquil space that gives you a feeling of stillness and spaciousness, which is important for the awareness of the human soul. And one of the YouTube channels I highly recommend if you want some more types of inspiration for a Hygge lifestyle is Simple Happy Zen. That's a great YouTube channel. I have it on my recommended list for you to take a look at. All of her videos really help you to become inspired and motivated to consume less. And so if the film's ultimate message is that humans are using too much and are consuming too much, and we have too much of a heavy presence on Earth, well, then we need to figure out what is most important to us and create a better list of priorities in our life. And once you awaken to having everything that you need already in your home, you will stop filling your life with stuff, content to own less and help the planet by leaving less of a carbon imprint. Now, for those that are hoarders, this is going to be a challenge. So this is something that has to do with spiritually awakening to understanding that, filling your home with things is not going to fulfill your soul. It's not going to make you happy in the long run. In fact, you can actually be happier with less. With quality versus quantity, you can actually have a more peaceful, enjoyable life. You're spending less time cleaning. You're spending less time, just producing more waste and having to throw things out. I wanted to show you. So I have managed to, this is my kitchen garbage bag, my garbage bag. I use this size. That's it. So if you can find ways to reduce your waste yourself in your house and recycle more or reuse, find creative ways to reuse containers and things like that, then that can be really helpful and beneficial for the planet. But I wanted to show you that I was really happy to get down to a very small little biodegradable bag for just my waste that I can't recycle. And it takes about a week to fill that up. So try to kind of challenge yourself. I've challenged myself, and it's been a great challenge. And this is one thing here that I wanted to say is that in order for green energy and even the nuclear energy or Tesla's electromagnetism energy to sustain us, the key to an advanced galactic world is for humans to awaken within, to remember how to live with less and be content and more in harmony and balance with nature. So as you can see from Tolkien's stories of Lord of the Rings, his hobbits and his elves were examples of people that lived closer in harmony with nature. And so they can be inspiring to us if we remember to live more simply and understand how much more peaceful it is in the Shire or Rivendell or Lothlorien. So keep that in mind. Every time you may want to buy something, or you may, look at your household and trying to be motivated, just think about how peaceful their lives are, when you look back at these stories, but also real, actual live experiences of those that have adapted to having more of a minimalistic lifestyle. I want to end with the quotes of the film that Jeff Gibbs leaves us, and he says this: "I know it seems overwhelming. It's the kind of thing we don't try to think about, but by not thinking about it, it stands a good chance of doing us in. I truly believe that awareness alone can begin to create the transformation. There is a way out of this. We must accept that infinite growth on a finite planet is suicidal. We must accept that our human presence is far beyond sustainability and all that applies. We must take control of our environmental movement and our future from billionaires and their permanent war on the planet. They are not our friends. Less must be the new move towards human consumption. If we get ourselves under control, all things are possible. And I have my quote that I left, that greener energy is one answer for a better future. But the key to sustainability is remembering how to live more happily with less. Just like the hobbits and elves of Tolkien help remind us of living in balance with nature in peaceful ways, not in excess. And that's it. So that is the film, and I highly recommend you being able to take a look at it yourself. I think that it's a really great eye-opener, and if you're somebody that's been really into green energy and conservation in that way, I think that everybody should really take a look at this video and understand, some of the future implications. But hopefully I gave some thoughts and some solutions. I really, truly, intuitively feel that we really need to look at nuclear energy, and we need to use greener energy in places that we can, where it can sustain our homes, our individual homes with solar panels, and it can sustain, smaller stores or companies or, smaller facilities definitely can get the benefit from hydropower and the wind power and even the solar power. But we really need to think, if we're going to power whole cities, then we're going to have to use and utilize the forces of the universe and really look at the atomic energy that is within us and all around us. And it's free and it will always be there. So that's really what I wanted to get get the message about, is just that the nuclear energy is something that we need to really look at more. And although there are some downfalls of nuclear energy, there certainly are benefits as well. And we definitely need to revisit Tesla's original thoughts and ideas. So I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that it gave you some hope and some clearer understanding of maybe what's going on with the green energy movement, because I know that when I first saw the film, I knew in my heart, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to make so many people's heart and hope just, sink. And I just realized that, there still always is hope. And even the director, Jeff Gibbs, he even said that the key to all of this is our individual awareness and our awakening and looking at ourselves and our lives. And I think that it is happening. I think that there's a very positive movement towards minimalism, and people are consuming less, but we need to get everybody on that page together. We need to make sure that we're doing this all together as one, and that we don't have, these other parts of the population that are living really largely and are not thinking about the others. And I do want to highlight, I understand that some celebrities, and I understand that, billionaires and those that have made a lot of money for themselves, that they have always that individual right to build huge homes that take up a lot of energy and, and produce a lot of waste themselves. But the thing is that I think going into the future, we're going to have to really look at ourselves individually, and that is calling to attention these people too. And that's also what the film is pointing out, is that greed and profit is something that we really need to make sure is not being used in the name of green energy by these billionaires that want to invest in green energy, and yet it's not as efficient right now. I don't see anything truly sinister about that. I think that everybody is trying to do the best that they can at the place that they are. And we are in the very beginning stages of green energy, and no one really knows what it was going to do when we put everything out there, and there was a hope behind it. And I don't believe that this means that we need to completely stop green energy, but we need to think of it more logically and in combination with nuclear energy, and find ways of utilizing the forces around us. And I think that this is something that probably will be our answer to the future. And this is maybe that middle way that both the left and the right can be happy, and reach some type of compromise. But I don't think that this is something that was done with evil intent, but that it was more just that we are in the beginning stages of seeing this potential. And I think that people have tried their best to give their effort to producing greener energy or more beneficial energy for the earth and nature. But at the same time, it's probably not a complete answer right now, that we are going to have to struggle together to come up with greater solutions together for the future. And that I really truly believe. I don't think that this is a time to start pointing fingers. And although he said, Jeff Gibbs, in the end with his quote about millionaires saying that, the billionaires of this world are not our friends, well, they are part of us too. They are in this collective with us as well. And we will not get anywhere pointing our fingers of blame, but we must have some type of conversation that's a very honest look at what we are doing, and not be fooled into the illusions that we're helping the planet when really we're not. And I think that that is something that we really need to come to terms with. And if celebrities and those that are making so much money and are the ones that you really do consume a lot in terms of having these huge homes and running, a lot of electricity, if they can start to lead by example with paring down. I always thought to myself, if I ever became famous, I would never have a huge home. First of all, I wouldn't want to clean it. Second of all, I really don't want that big of a home to myself. I like more of a cozier place. Although I will still make it look like Rivendell. But at the same time, it's not about the size, it's about the quality. And I think that if we can have more rich people in this world who have the means to create bigger and go bolder and bigger, if they lead by example, that they still can temper themselves and, live modestly, well, then that would be a great example for everyone. And maybe that would be something that would really help others take a look in themselves. But that's just my thoughts. So I hope you all enjoyed this, and I cannot wait to read your comments. I'm happy that you got a chance to leave them for everyone to see. And we'll see if we do another video on this, but I did want to get my response out there and show you that there is definitely hope. So do not lose hope and still watch the film, definitely, but keep an objective eye and understand that this is in the very beginning stages of finding more efficient ways to power our world. And I do believe that is, as Jeff Gibbs said, that the answer is about our own individual awakening and awareness and really looking at ourselves. And when that happens, we're going to consume less, we're going to be happier with less, and we will not have to power so much excess that we have right now. There's a lot of excess that we have, and we can just dial it down and get back to what's really important in the world. And that is when we will be able to have all the energy that we need. And we'll also be more content and happier because we will find and discover the secrets that, as long as you are living in a state of security in terms of having a happy home and, having less things around you, but things that are meaningful to you, and it's more quality versus quantity, I know that more people will realize how happier they can be. I know I have in my life. So I wish that all for all of you, and definitely try to look up some inspiration and tips from Simple Happy Zen. I think it's a great channel to just get you started on minimalism yourself. And I will see you all in the next video. Namaste.